I'm David Bank, and from ImpactAlpha, this is an Agents of Impact podcast, live-ish from Davos.
I've never been to Davos in the World Economic Forum, and my hypothesis was that we would get into these rooms and meetings with these very powerful people, and it wasn't going to be a goddamn thing that we heard that was a better plan than our plan. And what I have learned over the past week is that hypothesis was correct.
That's Donnel Baird, CEO and founder of BlocPower, the VC-backed startup that is electrifying buildings in low-income communities while training local workers to do the retrofits. Donnel is in Davos with two of BlocPower's partners, Jeffrey Dunston, the CEO of Northeast Brooklyn Housing Development Company, and Dr. Luis Aguirre-Torres, the Director of Sustainability for the city of Ithaca, which is committed to decarbonize its entire building stock. ImpactAlpha's Roodgally Senatus caught up with them over Zoom to talk about what kind of good trouble they're getting into in Davos while rubbing elbows with the business and political elite. Let's jump right in.
Would love to take a few minutes and ask you guys, what are your thoughts on the shooting that happened in Texas?
Well, first of all, it's good to meet you. It's great to be here. I think I do have kids. I have two children. And it's infuriating, man. It's just, anger. I think what I was feeling last night when I was reading the news. And I just couldn't believe that it's happening again. And I can't believe that we still cannot do anything about it. There is all these efforts that now seem empty. Like, it happened again. And I don't know what we need to do. We probably need to change people, that are dictating the rules at this point. We need to make sure that we vote them out. I don't know, man. I think it is just a sense of anger and sadness, that overcomes me.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how I feel about it. I mean, we just, experienced the Buffalo situation, and now we're hearing about children and a teacher being killed in Texas, right? Of all places where the gun laws were totally relaxed, right? So let the madmen loose, kind of thing. I think that, where we're at in terms of gun policy is ridiculous, and I think that it's going to take a real vote of the people to remove those folks in government that will not support gun policies, and I don't think that anyone has said that they're taking away their Second Amendment right. It's the use of the type of weapons that's available to the market, right? But in the meantime, we're watching. I've lost count of how many mass shootings we've had, and so here's another one added, right?
Yeah,
and without getting too political, it's always astonishing to hear the response, right? So it's either the gunman has a mental illness, or they kind of classify and justify for them, right? But in the meantime, lives are lost. In this case, outside of losing, elders in Buffalo, now we're talking about losing children. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. I have young children who are in elementary school right now, and I'm actually pretty shaken up by it. I mean, I think back to Emmett Till and his mother, who, after he was brutalized, had the open casket. And so oftentimes, you want to be sensitive in these things. But the truth of the matter is the fact that she had that open casket to America and the world, what was happening to children. I have a 6-year-old and a 2-month-old. And so when you hear that they cannot identify which body belongs to which child, which belongs to which family, because the bullets have mangled the children so much that they can't even identify which kid this corpse is, like that is horrible. I think so. That's one part. I think in my left brain, I'm thinking, we have a gun violence problem in New York City, and the mayor and the NYPD has given BlocPower a list of several thousand young adults who they believe are likely to be involved in a future incident of gun violence. I won't get into their methods, but that's their belief. Mm-hmm. And we have been asked to hire and train those individuals on clean energy and how to install solar panels and building electrification projects. And so there's this link between unemployment and disconnection and gun violence And we want to create a new kind of economy that can put people to work in good jobs. So I think part of me is thinking about, like, you know, our country's in real trouble. What kind of political coalition needs to be built to not only pass gun reform, but to pass the clean energy legislation that we need? I mean, when it comes to clean energy, all the frustration that we feel about gun reform, where it's like year after year and nothing's changing, we can't have that happen in clean energy. Like, we actually have to figure out how to win and be successful at our clean energy policy and legislation, or else the whole planet's going to burn. Right. And so is there kind of a political coalition that can be built to improve the country across a range of matters, you know, gun regulation, you know, job creation, clean energy, and all the stuff that we need? So that's kind of what I'm thinking, but what I'm feeling is a lot of heartbreak.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, speaking of Davos, please give us a picture, you know, of what it's been like over there. What's going on?
Yeah, Jeff, Luis, what are you seeing?
I have seen a beautiful country, right? Where a lot of people are gathering with a lot of various topics and issues. I think Davos, in terms of energy and places that I've been, I mean, I see it actively in use. And I'm totally amazed, especially in the hotels, right? With the lights, you know, set to go off, and if they're not used, they're off. And as soon as you walk off the elevator, the lights pop back on, right? So, you know, so I'm kind of impressed with the fact that they've incorporated, you know, conservation into these buildings, as such.
We were talking earlier about how it is so different from what we had in our heads. You know, we're coming here to meet the elite, you know, to meet the billionaires and the decision makers and the guys that are shaping the future. I mean, a lot of the conversation is, you know, on one hand about the past. It's all about, you know, like, oh yeah, we've done this. And then there's people talking about, you know, the status quo, you know, it's something that we need to change.
Yeah.
And then there's a lot of intention and good intention, but there is, you know, very little proposal, like actually, you know, operational proposals that could actually take, you know, the status quo, throw it away, and create a new future. It is impressive to see how much interest there is in anything related to blockchain and Bitcoin. You know, it has really taken over. There's been, you know, important conversations on equality, important conversations on climate change, important conversations of the role of government, private sector, civil society, what you can do as an individual. But once again, you know, we get all together, and it's like there is so many calls for action. You know, like so many.
Right. Yeah.
But there is no roadmap. There is no like let's do this. And then you have, you know, this is important to say because, you know, you have somebody like Donnel that comes in and tells you as it is. You know, like, this is the way I see it. This is the way we should go, and why, and asking the tough questions, and everybody applauds. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's a real question. You know, what are we doing now? Like, what is next? And I think there is a responsibility that people are understanding here. There is, you know, the fact that they are here means they care. And there are different agendas, but, you know, they care. But the next step is going to be the hardest one, you know, make a step in the right direction and something that we can sustain, you know, and not wait until Davos next year to see that it worked or it didn't work, but to have a way in 2 months to say, you know what, we probably need to fix something else, you know, and you know, but being real about it. So it's been mixed experience, nothing like we expected, but wonderful to see so many people with so much influence care about this issue. Next step is a hard one, and I'm hopeful, you know, that we're going to make it.
I want to pick up on something that Donnel put out there in terms of the connection between gun prevention and the opportunity to create jobs, right? I mean, I think, and as a partner with BlocPower, you know, we work with them to make sure that we can help assist in placements and things of that nature through my organization, you know, and I think, you know, there's a real opportunity here to really look at how to take advantage of the green energy jobs or the potential of it, right? To train, to expose young people to the, you know, what the possibility is, right? But here again, we're waiting on government to move some things forward to make it a real opportunity, right? In the interim, we have to deal with the, you know, social mechanisms to help folks begin to understand the benefits, right? And so, you know, it's a lot of work, and, you know, I'm glad to be a partner with BlocPower on this and whatnot. You know, and not only because, you know, we're on the ground, we're in housing, we understand the socioeconomic issues, right? And so I think, again, there is connective tissue in New York for this. And I think, the mayor is committed to this. And so he really needs to put resources behind it, or continue to put resources behind it, from the previous administration into his administration now, right? And so, I think that's where we begin to figure out what does a real coalition look like around gun prevention, right? Because you have to have the young voices to get involved with it, right? To embrace the issues and become the voices.
Yeah. Today, Mariana Mazzucato was giving a talk about, market creation. And he was talking about this coalition that is being created to, redefine markets. And in the process of doing that, talk again about what the social contract should be for this to be successful. And I think today was very meaningful because, people were paying attention, and there was a concrete proposal that is still hard, for everyday people to implement. But at the same time, somebody came and said, like, this is what we can do. And like when we bring it back to the US, most of the people here that I have met from the US, including us, to be honest, and we have a concrete proposal of what we can do, because it's all together. So it's like we were talking about, the war in Ukraine, we're talking about the shootings, we're talking about clean energy, it's all connected. And finding that nexus perhaps is hard, but once we do that, then we may have a solution, and that's why we're here.
I think that what Jeff and Luis have shared is so important. And I just want to double click on it a little bit, as they say, double click. Look, my hypothesis here is based on when I was in business school 10 years ago, I went to a Clinton Global Initiative event and I was terrified. They put me in a room to talk about clean energy. You had General Wesley Clark, who'd run for president. You had Theodore Roosevelt IV, who was the grandson of President Teddy Roosevelt. You had Jim Rogers, who was the CEO of a global energy utility company. You had superstars from the political world and the business world. And here I was, a grad student who didn't know anything about business. And right before I went in, I realized how intimidated I was. I had to go to the bathroom and try to calm myself down. And I was so nervous I couldn't speak. But about 45 minutes into the meeting, as I was listening to them, I realized what Luis just said. I always thought there was some master plan on climate change. And when you get to the highest levels, you're at the Clinton Global Initiative and you're in the room with former presidential candidates and the children of presidents, that secret plan for climate change or that secret plan for reducing gun violence would be revealed to you by the people who control the puppet strings. And there is no master plan. So my hypothesis, I've never been to Davos in the World Economic Forum, and my hypothesis was that we would get into these rooms and meetings with these very powerful people, and our plan that we've been demonstrating in New York with Jeff Dunston in Brooklyn and NEPCO, greening dozens and dozens, almost 100 buildings, the plan that Luis Aguirre-Torres has put together for Ithaca, where we're going to electrify 6,000 buildings. My hypothesis was that we were going to get here to Davos and it wasn't going to be a goddamn thing that we heard that was a better plan than our plan. And what I have learned over the past week is that hypothesis was correct. And that is why I'm so grateful to Luis and Jeff for taking time out of their schedules to come to Davos. What is this? This is a scouting mission. We're going to have the full-blown Davos in 6 months in January. What's going to happen is tomorrow morning, the World Economic Forum, at their request, has asked to meet with Jeff and Luis and myself because they also understand that our plan is a better plan on climate than many of the other plans that are being discussed. And I fully expect all of us to be invited back in January with the full imprimatur of the World Economic Forum for Davos in January to discuss how we are leading the way on clean energy in New York in a way that other cities around the world need to follow. Now, it can be hard for certain kinds of people to accept leadership from a brown brother named Luis and a brown brother named Jeff. It can be hard for certain kinds of people to accept that. But what we're doing is working with the World Economic Forum to educate everyone that we have solutions that we've been demonstrating in Brooklyn with Jeff, that we're starting to demonstrate in Ithaca, and then New York is going to lead the way on this thing in terms of job creation, clean energy, and building electrification, that we can chart a path to save the planet and build the kind of political coalition that's necessary to do gun violence, climate change, and solve all other kinds of problems. That's why we're here.
Wow. I would love to follow up on that. Dr. Louise, you're a local elected official. Jeffrey, you've almost 30 years in affordable housing and community development. And Donnel, you're doing really amazing work with electrifying buildings and this partnership with the city of Ithaca. You guys are used to hearing from people, right? From going out in the communities and hearing what are their concerns, what do they want, what do they think about the clean energy transition? How can they participate in this transition as well? Now, from what Donnel said, it seems like you guys are going to report, right? What are the most significant key points you guys want to make sure that you're heard as you go into this meeting tomorrow morning?
I think what we can bring to the table is real stories, right? Real interaction, right? We talk about Lewis, electrifying 6,000 buildings in Ithaca, right? Or not. Well, Northeast and its partner Trinity Financial just did 180 units in Brownsville, New York, where the building was forced to become electric, right? On the affordable housing side. Do we really understand what that really means at this point, right? Other than getting the political praise that a newly constructed building in the middle of public housing, right, that now has to become a part of the Van Dyke community is fully electric, right? I'm not even sure of the metrics of how we measure that, because the pipeline was denied New York City, right? And so we were forced to move to electric in a affordable housing model. And so while I appreciate, the work with Trinity Financial as our partner on that, I think we have stuff to learn down the line and what it really looks like. And it's the first step in New York City towards electrifying buildings.
And that's important. I think, we heard a lot about, from Kerry, Al Gore, Raimundo, everybody who came here, and everybody's trying to inspire and provide hope. But, we had hope for such a long time. We've been hopeful for a while, but people need this opportunity. So I think somehow tomorrow we're going to talk about, thanks for the hope, but we're here to give you some opportunity for change, for job creation, for clean energy, to get people, away from the streets and back to work and, doing something productive for the country, for the planet. So, I mean, if I were to summarize this, this realization came from a conversation with a different person, but the truth is, we're sick and tired of hope, let's bring opportunity, and that's what we need.
Yeah, let's bring some reality, and let's bring the reality. We're New Yorkers, and New York is a very real place. I mean, hope and $2 can't even get you a cup of coffee in New York. I mean, not in Ithaca, not in Brooklyn, no place, right? And so I think when you hear and you read in between the lines of what Luis and Jeff are saying is there's a lot of people who talk about doing a lot of stuff, but we're actually doing it. We're doing it in Brooklyn together. We're doing it in Ithaca, and we can bring the reality of the experience of how do you finance electrification and affordable housing,
right?
In one of the biggest real estate markets in the world, in Brooklyn. How do you finance and implement electrification of an entire city? And one of the things I'm working on, and I don't want Jeff and Luis to be too surprised by this, but they know me, they know what I'm about. We're trying to put together a global coalition of cities that are going to follow their lead in Brooklyn and Ithaca, Stockholm, Rio de Janeiro, cities around the world, Cairo, where the United Nations is hosting the climate negotiations in its 27th year. They need to learn lessons from Brooklyn and from Ithaca and our plans and our implementation. Why don't we have a grand challenge, a global challenge, where we say, this is what we're doing in Ithaca, this is what we're doing in Brooklyn. How about some of you other countries step up? And let's make it a friendly competition. Let's get this thing going. We're New Yorkers, we're competitive. But that's a message that we're bringing. And so the time that I've spent here at Davos has been talking with folks from different cities, from people in Perth, Australia, people from Cairo, people from Dubai, people from the slums in Kenya, which has 1 million people and is larger than most cities, the slums and the favelas in Rio de Janeiro. What can we put together so that we can collaborate and take lessons that we're learning from all of the work that's being done in Ithaca and Brooklyn and apply it to a global challenge? And are there other cities around America that want to follow our lead? And so Menlo Park, Palo Alto, where Stanford is located, Savannah, Georgia. These are cities that are inspired by Ithaca. They're calling Luis and asking him for advice. So let's figure out a way to formalize this and make sure that the leadership that's being provided by Ithaca and Brooklyn, by Luis and Jeff, is global and is national and is as influential as it needs to be. So that's why we're all here in Switzerland.
Wow. So the goal from the start, right? So the goal for Davos was going in and kind of starting up the conversation. How can other global cities use the model that you, BlocPower, have been implementing in partnership with local elected officials?
We wanted to be humble. We wanted to listen and hear what other people had to say and see if they had some best practices that we could learn from and take notes. But we listened for a little bit, and our plan is better. And so, yes, that's correct, Roodgally.
Did you hear from them? Did you hear from any potential partners from, say, Stockholm or Rio?
We met with the mayor of Stockholm.
Oh,
these people have heard of the work that's going on in Ithaca. Ithaca is a global story that's inspirational to people. We heard from Perth, Australia. I mean, Luis, who all is reaching out to you for your advice and guidance on this?
Yeah, we have talked to a couple of cities in Denmark. We talked to elected officials in Tel Aviv, in Tokyo, in Morocco, in Ethiopia. So we are definitely talking to a large number of people who are interested in the work that we're doing. And for a lot of them, it's a bit of a mystery, but Jeff mentioned it. A lot of the time, what we need to do is, we need to force people into making the right decisions. In the case of Brooklyn, a non-pipes alternative, eventually led affordable housing to be full electric. But then there was the skill and there was the knowledge and the understanding of making it happen. And I think Donnel is absolutely right. We need to create a global coalition of cities willing to do this, willing to take the next and hard step, to make it happen. So yeah, we're talking to a large number of cities and organizations that want to help those cities. So we're ready to roll.
I just want to add that I'm more interested in real implementation on the ground, right? So the beauty of working with BlocPower is really taking and furthering the implementation of what they're doing, right, in a real way to be impactful to local residents, right? So here again, we need to engage them in these conversations. The old cliche, an educated customer is the best customer, right?
Yeah.
We have to educate folks that have not been exposed to the idea of what energy conservation is, right? We're talking about communities of color where these conversations don't happen on a daily basis, right? Where public housing doesn't encourage, conservation. Even in affordable housing, it doesn't encourage conservation, right? But yet we're told that we have to maintain recycling, so we have to educate residents now on how to separate out bottles and cans, right? Now, how big of a task that is for
But Jeff, you were talking about how energy efficient the hotels here in Switzerland are.
Yeah,
why can't our affordable housing in Brooklyn and Ithaca be like that, right? I mean, and that's what we're here to figure out how to do. I agree. And I want to double click on a conversation that I had that I haven't even had the chance to talk to Jeff about. Jeff is actually helping to hire many of the vulnerable young adults who we train on clean energy, on how to electrify buildings, who put solar panels on Rikers Island, even though their parents are incarcerated in Rikers Island, or they themselves may be incarcerated at Rikers Island. We have a young man on our team, I won't share his name, but he was in Rikers Island.
Wow. Yeah.
And he was trained and hired to be on the team to install solar panels on Rikers Island. On the bus ride over, he burst into tears because he said, I'm going back to the island. I never wanted to come back, but I'm coming back to do something positive, because the solar electricity generated from Rikers Island is providing low cost, clean energy to low income communities in Harlem, in Western Manhattan. Now, Jeff mentioned that he's helping to hire and create long-term career opportunities for many of the young people that we're hiring and training. Well, Jeff is doing that with us in Brooklyn. Luis, we're going to be doing that in Ithaca, where 20% of the city is low income. But they also need to do that in Europe.
Yeah.
They don't have enough construction workers in Europe to decarbonize, to electrify. They have to train up a whole new generation of young people to do construction work. And we're showing them on workforce development, on job creation, on how to have a career, the lessons that Jeff is showing us about how do you put vulnerable young people into long-term careers and have them thrive. Again, it's not just the buildings, it's also building up the people. And those templates and frameworks can be applied, in Europe and any place else. So that is something that I'm very excited about. I'm proud of the work that they're both doing on that.
Just to wrap up what I was trying to say is that in this process, it is educating folks about the issue of climate change, of the need to look at conservation, and this is our pathway to doing it.
And look, this is so important. The three of us are hands-on people. We like to do the work. We hate just talking about it. But the three of us wearing a suit at the same time, that's historic, man. That is truly historic. But that's how important this is for us.
Who ironed y'all suits? Y'all look good, man. Got the iron out.
I have a question for you, Donnel. It seems like you're approaching global frontiers, but BlocPower is still very local, and which is a good thing, because the work has to be done locally first, and then you expand further and further national. But the national battlefields you haven't really conquered yet. So are you worried about, I don't want to say the workload, but do you think it would be too much for BlocPower if there's opportunities and the global frontiers that you haven't really yet conquered on a national level, if you understand?
Look at who we're on the phone with. I mean, Jeff doesn't need my help and advice. Luis doesn't need. These are brilliant, strong, powerful leaders who they don't need our help. BlocPower's job is to facilitate and make part of their work easier for achieving the clean energy vision that they have. So we're a facilitator, and when we choose the right partners who are geniuses, like I'm not afraid to say, I mean, they're shy. I don't need to be shy on their behalf. Like Luis is a genius. Jeff is a genius. And I'm not just saying that. I mean, I think if you look at their track record and what they've achieved in very difficult circumstances, I mean, Jeff Dunston has built an affordable housing, I'm gonna use the word empire, a benevolent empire on behalf of helping families in New York. Luis showed up in Ithaca like a superhero. Like how Keanu Reeves landed in the Matrix, and then he changed everything around him as soon as he landed, and he stopped all the bullets. I mean, he showed up in Ithaca, and less than 1 year later, Ithaca's passed a law to decarbonize, be the first city in the world. Think about that. Now, there's people here at the World Economic Forum who spent 25 years trying to accomplish what Luis and Jeff have accomplished in a year. And BlocPower's job is to facilitate, is to find the right partners who will go deep. And at the same time, we're going to expand while going deep vertically, but we're going to take best practices as we expand horizontally. If you look at a company like Uber or Airbnb and the way that they expanded nationally and globally, you have to have a framework for picking the markets that you're going to expand to. We're not going to run around willy-nilly. We have data on San Jose. We have data on Buffalo or Rochester. And that will help us determine, is Buffalo the correct city? Is that the second city upstate that we should go to? Or should it be Syracuse, or should it be Rochester? So there's data, there's relationships that will help us determine the correct next steps, not only nationally, but globally. So we want to have 10 to 20 cities nationally and another 10 to 20 cities globally. And we believe that we'll raise the capital and find the teammates. And Luis and Jeff are hard to find, but we know that they're strong leaders across America and across the world, and we got to pick our partners shrewdly. And that's what we have done, obviously, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Got it.
And look, I mean, the question wasn't for me, but I need to say, because once again, Donnel is shy. No, he's not shy, but he's not saying this. There is a process. What we learn from BlocPower is that, there is a lot of value in listening to the community, to really crowdsource a lot of the solutions and a lot of the, the things that we don't see because we're so much into the day-to-day. So imagine if we were to do this globally. Imagine if we were to have 60 cities around the world working on the same, electrifying every single building. Imagine everything that we could learn. I mean, we don't want to read in a book like 20 years later how it didn't happen because of this and that. I mean, we want to make it happen, in real time. So I think BlocPower's ambition to go on global is justified because of the benefits. It's hard, but that's what they do.
What does it mean for Ithaca to be the first city, right, to implement this citywide? I mean, 6,000 buildings. You're going to be electrifying 6,000 buildings. What does it mean for the city of Ithaca to be the first to do this?
Well, I think for one, the city as a whole, collectively, we became comfortable with uncertainty. We are not comfortable with the certainty of the world ending because of climate change. We are more comfortable with the uncertainty of how this process is going to go. We know we're going to find a lot of problems that we're going to have to fix, and people are aware of that. Nobody expects this to be awesome, and in 3 years we're going to be all electric. We know it's going to be hard, and we know we don't have the right people right now, so we need to train people. But mostly there's this collective sense of ownership, and I couldn't really overemphasize how comfortable most of the city are today with uncertainty. And that's the step that we need to take. We cannot wait for the perfect solution. So we are happy to start and lead. And if we are capable of doing that, that's our value. That's what we add to the world. And, we may screw it up, but then the next city may not. And I think we're really comfortable with that position. So I think that's what it means. It means giving something to the world. And, you should see how beautiful it is, how truly beautiful it is when you hear regular citizens talking about this program. And I went to cut my hair the other day, and the guy didn't recognize me. It's a small town, so kind of everybody knows me. But this guy didn't recognize me, and he started telling me about, do you know that we're electrifying our buildings, and this crazy idea. I was like, well, tell me more about it, man. And it was the first time that I heard from somebody completely honestly what he thought about it, and he's really excited. And I was like, that's all I needed, man. I needed this validation. So I think that's what it means.
Jeffrey, I covered real estate, and the conversation I kept trying to drive is, what can the real estate industry as a whole do to take part in the climate transition and the low carbon transition? What kind of conversation are you having with your peers to take a part in this clean energy transition? Because they can do it as amenities, they can do it as community-based amenities for the surrounding organizations near their affordable housing properties and such. So what kind of conversations are you having with your peers to kind of encourage them to participate in the energy transition?
Well, the honest answer is very few conversations, right? We're looking at this phenomenon of being forced to do electric buildings, right? In the midst of the pandemic, right? And again, only because the prior government wouldn't allow a pipeline, right? So I think the conversations are happening at a higher policy level and not necessarily at a local level, right? In terms of impact, right? So it may be that we're looking, in the candy jar and trying to understand how to work through the candy jar, right? There's a lot to pick out, right? Yeah. And I also don't want to relegate this only to affordable housing, right? Because it's impactful across all the markets. Yeah. Right. So I think sometimes we have to be careful how we intertwine affordable housing into these type of discussions, into policy decisions, because it's a segment of the real estate market. Is affordable is not the major player.
It's just one asset class.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
But if you can decarbonize affordable housing, what's your excuse? Market rate housing, right? I mean, if we can figure out how to get this done, which Jeff is doing, again, it creates a template or a beacon or a pathway for all other kinds of buildings to follow. And I heard a stat here in Davos today: 70% of global wealth is real estate assets. I mean, the entire global economy is real estate.
Yeah.
And it contributes 30% of carbon emissions. In the United States, it's 20% of greenhouse gas emissions, but 30% of carbon emissions. And as you said, this is, a massive asset class, but, we're going to chart the way forward as to how to decarbonize this asset class.
Look, we are so determined to make this happen. You have no idea. And, we're inspired by history, man. Every major revolution that transformed a country or the planet started by, an uprising of the disinvested, of those who have been left behind, of those who people thought couldn't do it. And this is what we're talking about. Yeah, it's a brown dude or a black dude, but mostly coming from those places where we saw this investment. It affected our lives. So we know what we're talking about, and we know what the future could be like. So we are determined, we're intrepid, we're gonna make this happen. And it's more than words, we're actually trying to show it every single day.
And for me, I guess from a New York perspective, we are still coming out of a pandemic, right? With a whole new set of issues on affordable housing and rents, right? So we're dealing with institutional issues at this point, and what that really looks like. So I think the conversation is changing a bit. At the same time, trying to figure out how to meet these challenges, right? We have a recovery issue that we have to deal with. And what does that look like going forward? So I think we're somewhat in a complicated conversational space, but I think, again, for those of us who are used to being on the ground and outside of policy, because sometimes policy don't reflect reality, right? Because you have to be on the ground with the people and hear the people and then figure out the best solution, right? We understand we can't do the fix on all the issues, but if we get those issues that are important to people fixed, that begins the broader conversation, right? It begins a mobilization and opportunity to build a coalition around, where we need to go, right? So, like Louise mentioned, when he can sit down with a local resident who don't recognize him and he's talking about his project and he's excited about it, that's validation.
Anything to add?
No, I'm just incredibly proud to be to continue to learn from Jeff and Luis. I'm glad they brought their New York State swagger to Davos. We're gonna teach these folks. We're gonna teach these guys a thing or two while we're here. But we came here because we mean business, and I hope that you have seen that this is the right team that's experienced, that has a track record to help lead on these issues, and that is certainly what we intend to do. So, always grateful to you, Roodgally, for taking the time to check in with us, and certainly we'll keep you updated on the adventures of the Three Musketeers as we keep pushing this forward.
I love it.
So we'll be in touch. Okay, thanks so much. Thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good luck with everything.
That's going to do it for this Agents of Impact podcast. You can read more about Donnel, Luis, and Jeffrey, as well as all about BlocPower, and check out Rudy's recent photo feature on a BlocPower project in Brooklyn at ImpactAlpha.com. Big thanks to all of them, as well as to our producer Isaac Silk and the whole team at Impact Alpha, investment news for a sustainable edge. I'm David Bank, editor and CEO, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon.